research. Okay, my project is about indoor air pollution. So everyone here probably knows air pollution is a big thing in Hong Kong. But if you consider how much time we spend indoors, I mean, you go to school, you go to work 8 hours a day, and you go home. You actually spend a substantial amount of time indoors, so I'm interested in looking at the kind of things we breathe indoors. Now, one of the biggest sources when you're at home, for example, is cooking. So, when you cook something, it gives off actually pollutants into your home atmosphere. And we've actually seen from previous studies that these can have an effect on health. So, for example, in Hong Kong, Chinese cooking in general, gas stoves are very, very popular. So, most homes in Hong Kong like to use a gas stove. And when one of our previous studies, we actually found that gas stoves can have an effect on children's health. So they're more likely to have allergies, they might have asthma or chronic coughing, bronchitis, things like that. And so if you can think of that as that's the problem that we're facing, then what might be a possible solution? And one thing we could perhaps do is to change the kind of stove you use. So the trouble with gas is that because you're burning a fuel, you're going to generate lots of pollution just from the process of using the stove. So an alternative would be to use an electric induction cooker, which kind of works by magnetic induction, and it heats up food just because you have a metal pot, and it doesn't actually burn anything, but it still works quite as well. So in a way, my research would be testing whether this induction cooker is actually a good solution for the problem of indoor air pollution from cooking. So, say I'm going to do like a pilot study on about 15, 20 households. I'm going to do a before and after study. So basically, we're going to just change one thing, which is the stove, and everything else we're going to try to keep the same. So it's a bit like those spotting the difference pictures. So the overall picture looks the same, but you have to find sort of what changes when you change one detail. So, for example, with my 20 households, we're going to visit the same households twice. So it will be the same household, it will be the same person cooking, and in fact it will be the same meal. So, I'll be there with my little clipboard, I'll be, observing what they do the first time, all the cooking, measuring the ingredients, weighing the ingredients, seeing how much they use, what kind of cooking oil they use, all the little details, and we have to ask the family to recreate the same menu the second time we visit. So the first time they're going to cook their dinner, we're going to observe and measure lots of parameters, and then they change the stove they use from gas to electric, and then we're going to go visit their home again and do the same measurements, and they're going to cook the same meal, and we'll sort of see if there's anything different. So the sort of things we're going to measure would include things like fine particles, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitric oxide, and nitrogen dioxide, things like that. These are kind of a lot of the main pollutants that people study in air pollution. We're also going to measure the temperature and the humidity and see if that changes if we use a different stove. And also we're going to issue a health questionnaire. So we're going to interview all of the members of the household, including the person cooking, but also other members of his or her family, and see if they have any health symptoms, so particularly respiratory symptoms. So, have they had coughs and colds and allergies, that sort of thing. We're going to ask them about that, and then when we come back, the second visit, we'll ask them again and see if there's any difference there. And so basically, we're kind of expecting the pollutants to be reduced from the changing of the stove. That's just our working hypothesis, and it would be interesting to find out and watch people cook their donuts. But that's basically what my research is about. Thank you.
Interesting. I thought it would have been assumed that, of course, electric stoves would be healthier automatically. Why? I thought people would have thought that as common knowledge. So, why do you feel you need to study this?
Well, induction cookers aren't really used by that many people. I suppose, at the moment. I mean, in terms of just, I think in Hong Kong generally people are more used to cooking with gas. And I mean, the traditional electric stove, they just have a heating coil and it warms up really slowly, and people don't like using it so much. Whereas with the induction cookers, you actually get a similar kind of heat, and the control over the heat, which they kind of prefer when they're cooking, especially with some Chinese style cooking.
Okay.
And so we're basically just trying it out to see if, because it's more expensive than the gas stove. We're going to try it out and see if it really is worthwhile in terms of the health benefits, how much benefit we get, how much pollution reduction we get, and that sort of thing.
Why 20 houses? Why not 10 or 100?
It's to do with resources and how many people we can get to participate, because it's going to be like a volunteer sort of practice.
I was wondering, what about flat layout? Some kitchens are open to the living room, others are closed off. Might that be a factor?
It might be, but we will be measuring the ventilation as well. So,
Okay, ventilation.
so before we start the measurements for the beginning of the evening, we actually do it's a kind of decay study. So we release a sort of harmless chemical and we measure its concentration and watch it go down. And that way you can sort of determine how quickly the air in the room changes, how quickly stuff is being moved out. So if they have exhaust fans or something, and they use those, we can measure the airflow. And also we actually measure the dimensions of the kitchen as well, and make notes of the layout. So we try to make it very comprehensive in terms of understanding the environment we're studying in each house.
Are there any other factors like, some furniture can degas certain chemicals. New furniture, for instance, can have the cloth from carpets. A new carpet, for instance, can be releasing gas. Furniture can do that as well. Is that a factor that you're considering?
Well, we won't really be looking at those chemicals so much. So, I mean, if you're looking at, say, things like combustion products, like carbon dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, things like that, that tends to be more from the cooking side of things. And well, also you get that in the background, but you don't get so much of that emitted from, say, furniture. That's more likely to get things like formaldehydes and.
Okay. All right. Any questions?
This sample size calculation, how did you calculate it's only 20 hours?
It's a pilot study, so it's kind of done on a volunteer basis. So it can't be very large because that's like how many people you can get. Most people probably wouldn't want a team of researchers dragging a suitcase full of equipment to your house to watch you cook dinner twice. So it's,
if you find 20 houses in the same building, 20 apartments,
no, not
so it will
necessarily
be
in the
selection
same
bias.
building. No, they won't necessarily be in the same building. It will just be sort of different people in different sort of estates and different layouts. So it's going to be. I mean, it's not a lab. Yeah, it's not going to be like a lab setting, because I mean some places they actually have a lab kitchen and they kind of have a stove and they cook and certain things and tiny things. That's like a very experimental setup. We're kind of trying to look at a real environment. So these are ordinary people who live in Hong Kong, and we're watching them cook the sort of things they would usually cook, and it's kind of observational in that sense. Yeah.
Do certain kinds of recipes and cooking styles possibly influence? Because I can see if I'm cooking 3 dishes, of course it's going to be a different amount of pollutants than if I do 10. I mean, how would you standardize, or if I have a certain cooking style that maybe requires long-term simmering of a soup, for instance, I might cook a long time. How might that influence it?
Well, it would, but that's why we're asking them to basically prepare the same menu twice. So,
Okay, the same menu.
yeah, so for each family, we're going to ask them to prepare 2 to 3 dishes, so
Okay.
not more than that. And yeah, we basically, if we basically try to make the first time, we measure everything as accurately as possible, so that they can recreate pretty much the same menu the second time using the same quantities of ingredients and same styles. And so hopefully the main thing to change would really just be the stove.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.